This boy was reborn as Noah, the illegitimate son of the noble Duskull family. Even though he was only a one-star sword user, he came to put the entire family in its place. When his brothers tried to mess with him, all of those nobles got beaten down, and that's because this guy was once a legend. He never looked back as he challenged a level 999 boss all by himself. Even when everyone doubted him, he was a true master of the sword. After watching his beloved die right before his eyes, he was reborn in the future. Shifting to a mansion, a distant voice shouts the name of the fallen mage. Waking in a room, he sits on the bed with a severe headache. Analyzing the location, he realizes he's on a noble's property and gets confused. Still not understanding, he wonders what the hell happened for him to be there. Then, a maid appears at the door, asking if he needed anything. Asking for a weapon, he says he needs to return to the fight against the invaders. Confused, he asks who she is, and the girl introduces herself as his maid. Looking at his own hands, he realizes there's something very wrong there. Realizing the truth, he shouts that this body actually isn't his. Trying to understand, he wonders if he possessed someone else's body or reincarnated. Still disoriented, he asks the maid where he is and who he's supposed to be. At that, she asks if the fever is making him delirious again, backing away. Grabbing her shoulders, he shouts for her to just answer his questions. Frightened, she says he's the fourth son of the famous Duskull family. Hearing that it's the year 850, he finally begins to understand his situation. Remembering the artifact, he realizes this was because of her magical tool. Then he understands that he reincarnated 10 years before the war against the invaders. For his bad luck, he was reborn right in the family that rivals his swordsman. Correcting the maid's name, he remembers that actually she's called Selena. At that moment, another maid enters the room, bringing his medicine on a tray. Explaining about the medicine, they say it was a gift to take care of his health. Holding the bowl, he stares at the liquid with a look of pure distrust. Analyzing the situation, he already imagined what was about to happen there. Inside the bowl, a red and suspicious liquid waited to be consumed. Suddenly, he throws the bowl on the floor, breaking it into several pieces. Leaving the room, he heads toward the door to see who's outside. Coming face to face with a group, he asks who they are and what they want. The group's leader says they heard a noise and came to see what it was. Observing the young man, the man stares at him with a serious and intimidating look. Seeing the bowl on the floor, the man says he'll prepare a new dose. Revolted, he tells him not to mess with him, but the man doesn't flinch. Challenging the man, he asks why he doesn't drink the medicine himself. Remembering his power, he confirms that what's in the bowl is poison. With no way out, the group's leader says he'll force him to drink the poison. With a smile, he realizes his enemy's mask has finally fallen. Accepting the challenge, he says he needs to get used to his new body. With a confident look, he says he'll play with them just for a little while. Giving the order, the leader commands his two henchmen to restrain the young master. Obeying the command, they advance toward the boy to carry out the order. Trying to grab him, one of the men reaches out to grip his arm, but in a swift movement, he lands a blow that surprises the henchman. Being thrown back, the man is hurled against the wall by the strike. With great anger, the other henchman tries to attack, but he dodges just in time. Turning quickly, he lands a strong blow right in the second henchman's face. Seeing both on the ground, he realizes his body is weaker. Thinking about the situation, he decides to deal with them before investigating the poison. Out of patience, the leader tells them to finish it already, unsheathing their swords. Seeing something unexpected, he's surprised by what appears in his vision. As they advance, he sees an information window floating above the enemies. Analyzing the screen, he discovers he possesses a very rare appraisal ability. Totally confused, he wonders how he could have an ability like that. Dodging the strike, he realizes the enemies are just low-level novices. Blocking the blow, he defends himself from the simultaneous attack of both henchmen. Moving to the side, he lands a quick strike on the first one's face. Then he finishes off the first henchman with a blow, throwing him to the ground. Seizing the chance, he grabs the sword the enemy dropped on the floor. The second henchman advances, trying to land a downward strike, but the two blades clash, creating a powerful impact between them. With his strength, he breaks the opponent's sword, landing a strike immediately after. Falling to the ground, the second enemy is defeated, leaving the maid surprised. The leader recognizes his strength, then challenges him to a direct fight. Suddenly, he feels a strange sensation and a power awakening in his body. Surprised, he realizes that sensation was that of a mana core. That was the source of power only the swordsmen of the Duskull family possessed. In contrast, his old family's power came from a sacred core. Normally, these two powers should never coexist in a single body. The leader says he'll reveal a secret, since his power is out of control. Revealing the truth, he says the medicine was poison meant to amplify mana. He explains that his body was being destroyed by the uncontrolled energy. Determined, he bets his new body can handle both powers together. Never having tried, he decides to use his sacred core to suppress the mana one. Combining the powers, he prepares for the confrontation against the group's leader. Calling it a useless fight, the leader prepares to use his own technique. Using his ability, he advances rapidly with a strike that moves through space, but by a hair's breadth, he manages to block the attack, completely surprising the opponent. With swords crossed, the two face each other while engaged in a fierce contest. Surprised, the leader can't believe he managed to use techniques with the mana core. Analyzing the opponent, he taunts him, leaving the enemy with great rage. Facing the enemy, he prepares for the next move with a determined look. Spinning his body, he unleashes a circular strike to defend against the enemy's attack. The leader then prepares a powerful downward strike against the boy. Then the two strikes finally clash, causing a massive collision of power. Spinning his sword, the group's leader defends with a quick circular movement. Deflecting the blow, he also uses his blade to defend against the enemy's attack. Stepping back, he manages to wound the opponent's arm during the exchange of blows. Analyzing the situation, he realizes a very long fight will be bad for him. Taunting the boy, the leader asks where all his earlier courage went. With a smile, he says the enemy is so panicked he's lost his composure. Calling him a brat, the leader advances again to unleash another of his strikes. Shouting in rage, he says his techniques are impossible for the boy to predict. Using his ability, the leader disappears and surrounds the young master with his power. Moving through the hall, he prepares his grand surprise attack against his opponent. Staying calm, he concentrates to try and predict the enemy's next attack. Turning suddenly, he lands a precise strike right where the leader was. With the impact of the blow, his blade strikes the opponent's body dead on. Fallen on the ground and wounded, the leader doesn't understand how he was discovered so easily. Explaining the weakness, he says the enemy was too confident in his technique. Fallen on the ground, he asks what power that was, understanding nothing of the strike. Answering that he doesn't know, he says even he doesn't fully understand the situation. In that moment, he felt the power of both cores finally mixing inside him. His original sacred core combined with this body's mana core. Thinking about the future, he believes he can change the world if he masters this power. Thanking her, he finally manages to see a glimpse of hope on his path. Worried, the maids run over and ask if he's injured and if he needs a doctor. Saying he's fine, he points to the window, asking what that was. Landing on the window, a small dragon appears bringing a sealed letter for him. Taking the letter, the maid explains it's a summons from the current Lord Victor. Handing over the letter, she says the Lord wants to confirm his participation in the battle. Holding the summons, he decides he needs to investigate this for his own future. Then he asks the maids if they know anything about this battle. Confirming yes, she says no one who serves the family is unaware of the event. She explains it's a fight to steal mana cores from one another. In it, the siblings fight, and the strongest inherits leadership of the entire family. Realizing the truth, he understands why everyone killed each other in this endless dispute. Then the maid asks if he intends to participate in the battle for family succession. With a smile, he says she'll discover the answer very soon. Remembering the past, his old family was loved and respected by all people. In contrast, the Daskul family is a symbol of fear and uses demonic power. They say their current leader, Victor, is humanity's strongest swordsman. Arriving in front of a door, he prepares to meet the family's leader. Determined, he says he'll see the truth of that place with his own eyes. Announcing his arrival, his name is called to enter the grand main hall. Entering the hall, he spots the other family members gathered waiting for him. Observing the people, he realizes this was his new and strange family. There was the eldest son, a man of serious appearance, Damien Daskul. By his side, the eldest daughter, Julia, stared at him with a cold look. And finally, the family's second son, Cease, completed the group of siblings. Also present was the second daughter, Eve, who observed everything quite quietly. Looking at the third son, he finally finds the one responsible for his previous condition. He then confirms it was Skull, his brother, who had poisoned him before. Julia then says it's true he had completely recovered from the illness. Answering no, he warns he's going to dedicate himself to his sword training. Surprised by the answer, she stares at him with a look of great curiosity. Calling him trash, Skull says it's a huge waste of time for him to train. At that, he tells his brother to shut his mouth, calling him a great coward. Shocked, the brother can't believe what he heard, calling him an insolent brat. Interrupting the fight, she says that's enough since it was time. Suddenly it's announced that the great Lord Victor was arriving in the hall. Then footsteps are heard, indicating the family's leader had finally arrived there. Sensing the presence, the two eldest siblings close their eyes in reverence. At that, the other siblings close their eyes, awaiting the great Lord's arrival. Surprised by the pressure, he's astonished by that incredible man's power. Remembering his past life, he knew every swordsman knew that imposing name. Seated on his throne, the world's strongest man stared at all his children. Seeing everyone was present, the family's leader prepares for the announcement. With a serious look, he says, "For the family council to finally begin." Standing in the middle of the hall, he faces his father seated on the great throne. His father then says he called him to confirm what his intention was. Asking what he desires, the Lord wants to know his plans for the future. With a slight smile, he prepares to give his bold and daring answer. He then declares that he will win the dispute and reach the top of the family. The Lord warns him that this is a declaration of war against his brothers. Clenching his fist, he says his father wasn't entirely right about that. Correcting his father, he says it's a declaration of war against everyone there. Facing his older brothers, he continues with his bold and daring speech. Looking at the younger ones, he says his opponents aren't just them. Directing his gaze to the throne, he includes one more person on his list. With a defiant smile, he reveals that his father is also one of his targets. At that, his father grips the arm of the throne, releasing a bit of his power. Advancing toward the throne, he attacks his own father with a powerful strike, but the blow hits the pillar beside it, showing it was just an illusion. With the impact, debris from the broken pillar flies throughout the hall. Surprised, he realizes that was the power of his father's mana core. His father then asks if he really intends to surpass his power one day. Confirming yes, he responds to his father with a very determined look. At that, the Lord asks why he seeks so much power for himself. With a serious look, he says it's so that no one can take anything from him. Hearing the answer, his father opens a wide smile of satisfaction. Praising his ambition, he says his son is worthy of the Dazkul family. Then it's announced that from that day forward, he would join the dispute. Facing his children, they remain silent and just observe the scene. With a shout, his father tells him to always seek more strength. Shifting to the outside, we see the great Dazkul family mansion. In his training, he lands a strike on a straw dummy. With the blow, the dummy is split in half and falls to the ground. Despite the improvement, he knows it's still not enough to win. Realizing the fusion of the cores, he can no longer fight the way he used to. Questioning his new condition, he wonders what kind of power that was. Deciding to hide his secret, he thinks it's best no one knows about his two cores. His sister Julia appears, asking what he's doing there after praising him. She explains that their father became interested in him, just like in their brother Damien. Saying she came to see his progress, he understands the true intention of the visit. Grabbing a training sword, she prepares to begin without further delay. Attacking suddenly, she completely surprises him with a very fast and unexpected strike. With the impact of the blow, he's thrown backward by his sister's force. Asking if he thought this was a visit, she reveals she didn't come to chat. Still surprised by the situation, he prepares for what comes next. Then she advances again, delivering another strike in his direction without hesitation. Thinking it perfect, he decides to see how well he can fight with his body. Unleashing a sequence of strikes, she attacks him with impressive speed. Recoiling from the blow, he drags his foot on the ground to avoid falling. Advancing with everything, she delivers a strong downward strike at him. Saying he has talent, she warns it's still not enough. Questioning his strength, she wonders if that's all he can do. Surprised by the power, he realizes she's already reached the 7-star level. Calling him a disappointment, she advances once more to deliver another strike. Defending against the blow, he's impressed by his sister's incredible speed. Gripping the sword firmly, he decides to use his combined power to fight. At that, the two strikes clash, and he manages to defend against her attack. Realizing he needs more strength, he decides to use his mana and sacred core. Using his new power, he blocks her strike with a different technique. Commenting on the power, she calls it the mana core of a failure. She then reveals she heard his core was weak since birth. Reflecting on this, he understands his combined core looks like a major failure. Seeing she didn't notice the fusion, he decides it's safe to fight seriously. Challenging his sister, he says he'll show whether it's really a major failure. Advancing with his sword, he delivers a downward strike at her, but she dodges the blow, beginning to talk to him as she retreats. Asking if he knows the purpose of the dispute, he confirms he already knows. Saying that makes everything simpler. She drops the wooden sword on the ground. Releasing her power, she demands he hand over his mana core. Before that demonstration of power, he's completely without reaction for an instant. Shouting for his maid, he asks her to bring him his sword. Promptly, the maid tosses the sword in his direction for combat. Wielding the new weapon, he advances and delivers a strike against his sister. Defending against the blow, she causes a great collision of power between them. With great difficulty, he struggles to withstand the pressure of her strike. Being stronger, she pushes him backward, showing all her superiority. Turning the blade, he manages to block her strike with a new technique. With a smile, he surprises her, and she praises his skill. skill. Asking to see more, she shows excitement with the challenge he offers. Jumping backward, she asks if he can survive her next strike. Using her flame technique, she prepares one of her most powerful strikes. Sensing the danger, he prepares to block the blow with everything he has. Advancing rapidly, she delivers a powerful energy strike in his direction, but in an exchange of blows, he manages to defend against her surprise attack. With the impact of the collision, the maids are thrown far away by the force. She then asks if he's really going to keep fighting with just one hand. Challenging her brother, she says she'll force him to use both hands. At that, he switches his grip, preparing to fight with both hands. Advancing from behind her, he prepares a downward strike quickly, but she turns and manages to block his strike with her blade. With a smile, she comments that he finally used both hands in the fight. Being thrown backward, he's hurled far by the force of her blow. With great difficulty, he tries to balance himself while still falling to the ground. Impacting the ground, he's dragged for several meters, creating a large crater. Observing her brother, she remains silent, just analyzing the entire situation. Using all his power, he realizes he barely managed to defend against the blow. With his energy depleting, he understands his power is still limited. Using his sword for support, he stands up, reaching the limit of his strength. She then asks if he knows why they don't kill each other immediately. Explaining the reason, she says stronger cores take longer to grow, therefore it's not worth harvesting the cores while they're still maturing, but she admits he managed to block and even counterattack her strikes. With a threatening look, she says perhaps it's worth stealing his core. Running out of breath, he realizes he has no more strength to continue fighting. Using her strongest technique, she advances with a final and decisive strike. Shouting that's enough, his personal guard interferes and steps in front. Placing himself in front of her, he blocks the blow and saves the young master. The guard then shouts that if she continues, his master will end up dying. Telling him not to interfere, she says this was a battle for cores. Saying it's impossible, she's surprised he blocked her attack. Still exhausted, he just stares at his sister, without strength to continue fighting. The guard reveals his core was already completely exhausted, confirming the truth. Understanding the logic, she realizes he wouldn't have tired so quickly. Preparing to withdraw, he rests his sword on his shoulder, still exhausted. Admitting her mistake, she turns to leave, ending the fight for good. But she warns him that her desire for his mana core is real. Promising to fight again, she says she'll wait for him to get stronger. With a smile, he says he'll eagerly await that day. Walking away, she feels there's something wrong with her brother's power. Remembering the fight, she knows a 2-star wouldn't have stopped that blow. Looking back, she realizes he's hiding some kind of secret. With a smile, she says she hopes he continues growing in an interesting way. Far from there, in another mansion, someone was shouting in rage for having failed. With great anger, he laments having failed in his initial plan. Indignant, he doesn't accept that his father became interested in that trash. Shouting, he says not even he was recognized that way by their father. At that, the henchman says he has an important report about what happened. Telling everything he knows, the henchman explains the situation to his master. With a smile, he says he just thought of something very interesting. Threatening his brother, he says he'll remove him from the succession stage. Apologizing, the guard introduces himself as his new combat instructor. The man explains that his name is Kyle, leaving the young man surprised by the news. Kyle says the Lord sent him to keep the dispute from being boring. Using his ability, he decides to analyze his new instructor's level. With the assessment, he realizes the man's skills are more than sufficient. Asking if they're going to start, the instructor says there's another option. Handing over a letter, he reveals the Lord gave him a new order. Reading the letter, he discovers his mission is to clear a mana pool. The pool is a dangerous place where mana concentrates and attracts monsters. With a smile, he realizes he can use this situation to his advantage. Determined, he thinks about how he'll take advantage of this new opportunity. Fighting in the forest, Kyle defeats one of the monsters with a single blow. Accompanied by other men, he orders everyone to eliminate the monsters from the area. Examining the monster, they prepare to extract materials from the creature. Mocking the young man, they call him a coward and comment about his level. Thinking about the situation, the instructor doesn't understand what the Lord saw in him. Suddenly, one of the men shouts for them, running in their direction. Arriving at the location, they find several children passed out on the forest floor. Seeing that the children were unconscious, the instructor asks what the orders are. Saying the priority is to deal with the pool, they decide to take the child. Moving forward, one of the men carries the child on his back along the way. As they advance, the concentration of mana in the air begins to get denser. Getting closer and closer, the energy in the area was getting stronger and more visible. Sensing the mana, he warns that the monster lord must be nearby. Just then, a giant and mysterious creature appears before the entire group there. Seeing the monster, Everyone is surprised and identifies it as a fearsome scorpia. With the monster's arrival, the instructor shouts to take the children far away. Worried about the enemy, the instructor says its shell is very hard. Then the giant monster prepares to attack the group with its stinger. Facing the monster, he prepares for the great battle that's about to come. With one strike, the scorpia attacks, forcing everyone to retreat to defend themselves. Surprised by the strength, they realize the monster is very fast and powerful, but he advances, warning everyone that it's very dangerous to get close to the creature. Then the monster attacks the young man with its claws, but he prepares himself. Using his power, he defends himself and prepares for an immediate counterattack. Advancing against the claw, he prepares a powerful blow with his sword and power. With a precise strike, he manages to block the attack and defend himself from the monster. Surprised, the instructor can't believe he managed to defend against that huge attack. Just then, the monster releases its venom, launching several projectiles in their direction. Running through the forest, they dodge the poison attacks while repositioning. The scorpia's venom comes from its stinger, preparing for the next attack. Attacking from above, the monster launches a powerful poison strike against him. Concentrating his power, he prepares to deflect the attack with his technique. Deflecting the poison, he launches a powerful strike back in the monster's direction. Impressed, they comment that his swordsmanship is incredible, despite his weak core. Surprised, they notice that the monster's stinger managed to regenerate completely. Leaping high, he dodges a massive attack from the monster on the ground. Defending with difficulty, he uses his sword to block the next blow. With both hands, he grips the sword tightly, resisting the attack. Then he advances toward the monster, preparing for the counterattack. With a powerful strike, he hits the great monster's shell dead on, but his blade can't pierce the giant enemy's hard shell. Noticing the hardness, he understands it will be difficult to hurt that creature. Impressed, the instructor wonders how he learned that skill on his own. Asking for help, he delivers a strike to move away and create a distraction. He then asks the instructor to give him an opening for 1 second. The monster attacks the instructor with its stinger, but he prepares himself. Shouting, the instructor prepares to block the monster's powerful blow. Using all his strength, he manages to defend the attack and create an opening. Praising the instructor, he advances to take advantage of the great opportunity created. Leaping onto the monster, he runs toward the enormous creature's head. Landing on the head, he prepares to deliver a strike to its weak point. Taking out an item, he prepares to use the fangs he collected earlier. With a strike, he drives the fangs into the monster's head with force. With the impact, the fangs break, but they manage to pierce the monster's shell. Feeling the blow, the monster thrashes, trying to throw him off from on top of itself. Just then, the poison from the fangs begins to take effect, weakening the shell. With the poison, the monster's shell begins to soften, creating an opening. The instructor asks if those were the fangs from the monsters they killed before. He then explains that the venom from those spiders softens the scorpia's shell. Surprised, the instructor understands why he made a point to collect all of them. Enraged, the monster stares at the young man with its eyes glowing bright red. Attacking with its stinger, the monster tries to hit him with a strike from above. Just then, several magic circles appear, preparing a massive attack against the monster. Using his technique, the young man prepares a powerful blow to finish the fight. With an impact on the ground, the containment barrier is finally activated. Trapping the monster, the technique creates a large barrier to immobilize it. With the broken fang on the ground, the poison continues spreading through the shell. Saying the time is now, he prepares for the final blow. Leaping high, he advances toward the monster for the attack. Running across the monster's body, he gets closer and closer to the target. Dodging the attacks, he continues his advance with a confident smile. Launching his sword high, he propels it with a precise strike. Leaping over the tail, he prepares to catch the sword in the air. Remembering his sister's technique, he decides to try using it as inspiration. Catching the sword, he prepares one of his most powerful and new techniques. Concentrating his power, he prepares to use his family's style. Shouting the technique's name, he delivers a powerful strike from top to bottom. Falling toward the monster, he advances with all his strength and power. With a devastating impact, he hits the great monster's head dead on. With the shell broken, the poison spreads, finishing off the creature for good. Shocked by the power, they can't believe he was only a 2-star. Still recovering, he realizes he hasn't fully mastered the new technique yet. Praising the work, the instructor approaches and says he'll take care of the cleanup. Saying he has business to take care of, he says goodbye and turns to leave. Then he walks away, walking alone through the forest in search of his goal. At that time, the cause of mana pools was still a great mystery, but he knew the truth. A magical tool was the real cause of them. Arriving at a large tree, he prepares to find the magical item. With a strike from his sword, he opens a crack in the tree trunk. Inside the crack, he finds a magic ring that was glowing intensely there. Taking the ring, he finally says he found what he was looking for. Suddenly, a massive energy attack is launched in his direction from far away. Surprised by the attack, he wonders who could have done that to him. Retreating quickly, he manages to dodge the blow by a hair and escape. Surprised, he finds the children fallen on the ground, surrounded by a strange energy. Running in his direction, one of the guards warns that the monsters are acting strangely. Readying his sword, he turns around, getting ready for what's to come. At that moment, a horde of monsters appears, surrounding the group in a menacing way. Facing the horde, he and his group fight against the advancing monsters. Standing before a monster, he prepares for the attack from the massive creature. Shouting for him, the instructor rushes forward to protect him from the giant monster's attack. Saving the boy, the instructor thanks him for having saved them from that blow. Asking them to buy time, he prepares to use a new strategy. Observing the fallen child, he analyzes the magical item that was with her. He realizes that it's a tool that drains mana to feed itself. While they fight, the instructor warns that they won't hold out much longer. With a plan in mind, he decides to use his core to track the operator. Using the ring, he tries to interfere with the magic to find the true culprit. Closing his eyes, he concentrates to sense the mana and find the target. Somewhere in the forest, a mysterious man was watching the entire situation from afar. Finally finding the target, he opens his eyes, ready for the final hunt. Asking them to take care of the children, he warns that he'll return as fast as possible. Cutting a path, he defeats several monsters to reach his true target. Running through the forest, he follows the energy trail of the mysterious man. Using his speed, he leaps between the trees, getting closer and closer. Landing on the ground, he prepares to confront the enemy who is hiding. Shouting that he knows he's there, he orders him to come out of hiding. Jumping from a tree, the mysterious man appears for the confrontation at last. Attacking from above, he tries to land a blow, but the boy defends himself. With a sword strike, he manages to block the attack and protect himself. Facing his opponent, the man prepares for the next attack move. Surprised at being noticed, he praises him, even while calling him weak. The boy then asks who sent him, but the man refuses to answer. With a smile, he says he'll make him want to talk, one way or another. Advancing quickly, the mysterious man launches into attack against the boy. Trading blows, the two face each other in a very intense sword battle. Surprised by the power, the man wonders if that's a mana core. Answering that he doesn't know, he says he's still discovering his own power. Retreating, the boy prepares for his opponent's next big attack. Using his style, the man prepares his second form, an energy strike. His power manifests, creating a large, dark fog full of energy. With his technique, he launches several energy blades in the boy's direction. The young master then prepares to defend against the attack with his sword. Dodging by a hair, he manages to escape being hit by the energy blades. Defending himself with his sword, he deflects one of the blades with his technique. In the midst of combat, he uses his assessment ability to analyze the enemy. With the analysis, he discovers the name and power level of his opponent. Noticing the weakness, he realizes the enemy's swordsmanship is very amateurish. Distancing himself from the boy, the man attacks him with his energy blades again. With a precise strike, he deflects one of the blades and advances to attack. Taking a step forward, he propels himself to close the distance quickly. Leaping into the air, he advances toward the enemy with a strike prepared. Turning to the side, he prepares to deliver a fatal blow to his opponent. With a strike, the boy hits the enemy, but he defends with his sword. Finding it predictable, the man says it's too easy to deal with that attack. Launching several energy blades, the man attacks with his technique once more. The energy blades surround the boy, preparing for his final attack. Preparing for the counterattack, he decides to use his own family's style. Using his technique, he creates a protective barrier to defend against the attack. With the collision of powers, he manages to protect himself and advance against the enemy. Surprised by the technique, the man is shocked to see that familiar ability. Advancing to attack, the man tries to land a blow, but he dodges. Saying he's too slow, he strikes him with a fatal and precise blow. Spitting blood, the man is gravely wounded, losing the strength to fight. Falling to the ground, he drops his sword, defeated by the young master's technique. The man then asks how he managed to learn that powerful technique. He explains that he realized it during his fight against his sister Julia. With his new power, he can replicate the techniques of both families. Believing in his power, he says his unique techniques will show his worth. Then he orders the man to reveal who he was working for at that moment, but the man says he's very mistaken if he thinks he's already beaten him. Taking a pill, he prepares to use a desperate last resort. Surprised by the action, he wonders what that mysterious item was. Suddenly, the man begins to transform, dropping his sword to the ground. His body begins to grow, and sharp claws emerge from his hands. With red eyes, he transforms into a green and terrifying monster. Screaming in pain, he completes his transformation, becoming a powerful creature. Shocked by the scene, the boy realizes the man used monsterification. Advancing rapidly, the monster attacks the boy with its claws and fangs. Facing the enemy, the boy prepares for the difficult battle to come. Trading blows, they face each other in a battle of great speed and power. Noticing the strength, he understands his blade won't hold out much longer. Laughing, the monster asks how much longer he can keep fighting. With a strike, the monster attacks, but he manages to defend with his sword. Facing his opponent, the monster prepares for the next attack with rage. Trading blows, they continue to face each other in a battle of pure strength. With an open-handed strike, the monster tries to crush him from top to bottom, but he leaps backward, dodging the blow and escaping by a narrow margin. Still in the air, he prepares for landing, analyzing the battle situation. Doing a flip, he manages to land safely on the ground and reposition himself. Knowing he can't dodge forever, he decides he needs to find an opening. Gripping his sword, he prepares to use a new strategy against the monster. Mocking the boy, the monster prepares to attack with all its strength. Shouting that he'll end everything, he advances for his final blow, but the boy extends his hand, preparing to use the magic ring he found. With the ring, he creates an energy barrier to defend against the attack. Using an item, he creates a magical barrier to protect himself from the blow. With the collision, the monster is thrown backward, and the item falls to the ground. With a smile, he says his new power can replicate his old techniques. Leaping into the air, he prepares to use one of his most powerful abilities. Throwing the monster upward, he launches it with a massive wave of energy. Preparing his sword, he uses his new combined power style to fight. With his blade, he delivers a precise energy strike in the monster's direction. The strike hits the monster square on, piercing through its body with great power. With the impact, the monster is completely destroyed, scattering debris throughout the forest. Relieved, he says the magic ring saved him by a hair. That ring could nullify any attack and generate a massive shockwave. Saying it's time to return, he prepares to reunite with his group. Meanwhile, the group was fighting bravely against the horde of monsters surrounding them. At the limit of his strength, the instructor realizes he won't hold out much longer. Facing an orc, he prepares for the massive creature's final blow. Desperate, he realizes he won't be able to defend against that attack in time. But suddenly, the monster's club stops in the air, surprising the instructor. Holding the club, the instructor realizes the monster was mysteriously defeated. Seeing all the fallen monsters, they don't understand what happened to save them. Arriving at the location, the boy asks if they're all okay after the battle. Relieved, the instructor confirms yes, saying they managed to hold their own. Kneeling near the children, he says he took care of the one responsible for the monster frenzy. Using his power, he removes the energy that was draining the children's mana. With the energy removed, the children were finally safe and out of danger. Observing the children, he reflects on the situation and the danger they went through. Back at the mansion, he walks toward the main building, determined and serious. Determined, he says he'll track down whoever was behind that cowardly attack. His maid informs him that his sister Eve is the family's information broker. Decided, he thinks he first needs to find a clue to start his investigation. On the way, he's stopped by someone who prevents him from continuing his path. His brother Cease warns him that, brother or not, he won't let him enter. Facing his brother, he braces himself for the inevitable confrontation to come. Remembering his sister Eve, he knows he needs to talk to her no matter what. The maid had already informed him that she would know who attacked him in the forest. Releasing his power, he tells his brother to get out of his way immediately. But his brother reveals himself as her bodyguard, refusing to let him pass. Shouting in anger, the brother says he doesn't believe, he just wants to talk. Understanding the situation, he prepares to force his way past his brother. Drawing his sword, he says he'll open a path by force if necessary. Accepting the challenge, the brother unsheathes his dagger, ready for the big fight. Moving quickly, the brother attacks with a downward strike. Trading blows, the two brothers face off in a swift sword battle. Blocking the attacks, he manages to defend himself with his sword and power. Recoiling from the impact, he pulls back and prepares for the next move. With the distance, he prepares to use a new technique against his brother. Extending his hand, he begins to use one of his energy abilities. Using his technique, the brother launches a stone stake from the ground. Caught by surprise, he's surrounded by several sharp stone stakes, but with his sword, he manages to defend himself and destroy all the stakes. Spinning his body, he destroys the stone attacks with his blade and power. Then the brother uses his magic, creating a stone blade in his hand. Surprised by the technique, he wonders if that was a rock sword. Advancing to attack, the brother strikes at him with his new stone blade. Trading blows, they face off, and the young man defends himself with his sword. In an exchange of strikes, they clash at high speed and with great power. Facing his opponent, the brother prepares for the next attacking move. Leaping into the air, he tries to land a blow from above, but the young man dodges. Noticing the difficulty, he decides to use his assessment to analyze his brother. With the analysis, he discovers the name and power level of his opponent. Noticing the weakness, he realizes his brother's mana core is weak. Determined, he prepares to use his power style in a test of strength. Using his technique, he prepares to show the power of his combined core. With an energy attack, he launches a powerful strike toward his brother. Surprised by the power, the brother wonders if that's his mana core. Recoiling from the impact, he prepares to use one of his techniques. Using his dagger, he prepares to use the second form of his style. With his technique, he advances with a strike of great speed and power. Remembering the style, he braces himself for his brother's fast and inevitable blow. The instructor explains that the brother's style is focused on attack speed. Praising his knowledge, the brother says the young man has done his homework, but he warns him that knowledge is nothing compared to the real thing. Shouting for him to come, the young man prepares for the confrontation with determination. Advancing with his technique, the brother prepares for the high-speed strike. His power spreads out, creating a trail of energy wherever he passes. With his sword, he prepares to cut and defend against the blow. Shouting with effort, he braces himself for the impact of the powerful attack. With a collision of powers, the two strikes clash in a massive explosion. The energy spreads out, creating a huge shockwave from the impact. With the dust settling, the result of the battle is finally revealed to all. Still standing, the young man prepares to continue the fight, even wounded. His brother's attack managed to wound him, leaving some cuts on his body. Even with his technique, he couldn't block all the damage from the blow. Reflecting on the fight, he realizes that copied techniques have a major limit. He understands that he needs to master his own techniques to become stronger. Shouting that it's enough, the brother interrupts the fight and prepares to leave. Suddenly, their sister appears, interrupting the fight and calling both of them. Changing scenes, the three siblings are gathered in a room to talk. Seated, the sister asks what was the reason for that fight between them. The brother explains that the young man had a threatening and dangerous aura. The young man then asks why a family member was acting as a guard. She responds that she's not exactly the type who likes to fight like them. The brother asks what he was doing there, since the sister doesn't participate in the dispute. The sister then reveals that he wanted to know who hired the assassins in the forest. Surprised, he asks how she knew, shocked by her revelation. With a smile, she says there are very few things she doesn't know. She then says she'd love to tell, since it was her cute brother who asked. Noticing the condition, he asks what she wants in exchange for the information. She then asks if he's ever heard of the Infinite Library, surprising him. The library is a massive labyrinth, with secrets humanity hasn't reached. His mission was to go there and retrieve a book called UN for her. With a serious look, she says she wants the UN book at any cost. Remembering the book, he recalls that it revolutionized magical theory. In his past life, the book's theories saved countless lives in the war, but in the end, it wasn't enough to save the world from destruction. Agreeing to the condition, he says he'll bring the book to her. Shaking hands, they finally seal the deal with a handshake. With a carriage, they depart toward the city where the library is located. Inside the carriage, the maids accompany him on his new and dangerous journey. Arriving in Arcanum, they prepare to enter the city and continue on their way. Walking through the streets, they head toward the entrance of the Great Infinite Library. He knows he needs a guide to find the book in the labyrinth. Entering an establishment, he searches for someone who can help him in the quest. He looks for someone who can guide him in his search for the book. Walking through an alley, he follows the information he gathered in the city. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the sister awaited news about the deal. Sipping tea, she relaxes while waiting for her brother's return. At that moment, a butler announces the arrival of an unexpected visitor in the room. Entering the room, the third brother appears to speak with their sister. With a smile, he says he has some questions about their younger brother. Facing him, she sips her tea, listening to what he has to say. Sitting in the room, the two siblings begin a conversation about important matters. She then comments that it's very rare to receive a visit from him in that place. Revealing his interest, he says he was hoping he could borrow her strength. He asks about brother Cease, but she answers that he left on their father's request. With a smile, he provokes her, saying there's no one there to protect her. Keeping her calm, she says she has capable subordinates and that she'll be fine. He admits she understands him well, and she asks what he wants regarding Noah. Gesturing with his hand, he tells her that Noah managed to fight against Sister Julia. Then he reveals that he wants to know what the secret is behind that strength. He reminds her that even her assassin was defeated, and she notices how well-informed he is. Placing the cup on the table, she warns that she's sorry, but she won't be able to help him. In a direct manner, she explains that she can't pass along information that would influence the succession war. She justifies that favoring one person would make the others come after her. With an irritated look, he asks if she's saying she won't cooperate. She questions him if he thinks he can pay a price worth the risk. Smiling sideways, he repeats the word price, seeming quite confident. At that, a dark memory emerges, promising that she would soon discover the truth. Changing scenes, the story shows a city with a very tall tower. Through the busy streets, Noah walks decisively among the people. Arriving at a specific shop, he prepares to enter the establishment. Already inside the place, he stops for a moment and looks through the window. On the wall, some metal weapon racks are completely empty. On a wooden shelf, several books are perfectly aligned. Moving through the room, he comments that the place brings him many memories. From the back of the shop, owner Osrek warns that the establishment is closed. He explains that he's not there to buy, but rather to hire a guide. Osrek says he doesn't do that kind of work anymore, but Noah counters the argument. Giving a laugh, he says this story about being the best is a joke. Noah finds it strange, remembering that he was the man who loved the library the most. That's why he asks what the reason is for him not accepting jobs. Shouting angrily, he says it's not a problem a kid can solve. After the outburst, he stays silent for a moment, seeming to calm down. Apologizing, he says his nerves are on edge. At that moment, the shop door's bell rings, announcing a new arrival. When Julia enters, he's surprised and asks if it's really his sister. Standing at the door, she waves to the two men who were inside the shop. She explains that she saw him during a mission and decided to follow him there. Startled, the owner asks if she's Julia Daskul, and she simply confirms. He then calls Noah a kid, but Noah corrects him with his full name. Changing his mind, he says he accepts the job with the condition that she goes along. Seeing the sudden change, Noah suspects there's a reason behind this. Calling them both, he asks them to follow him to the back of the shop. In the back room, they find a woman lying sick in bed. In a memory, he tells them that all of this had happened about a month ago. He reveals that a dungeon monster cursed his wife during a mission. He explains that she's in a deep sleep that will eventually kill her. Noah suggests killing the monster to break the curse, but everyone who tried was killed. That's why he begs that Julia Daskul, being legendary, help him save her. She responds that she doesn't mind, but warns that Noah will go along to kill the monster. As a condition, she says she really wants to see him in action during the job. Facing her brother, she realizes he suspects her real intentions with this. Then Noah turns to Osrek and says they'll count on him to guide them. With a clenched fist, he guarantees with total confidence that they can leave everything to him. Outside, Noah asks if it's okay for her to be there on another mission. She says everything's fine, and that what she really wants is to discover his little secret. Remembering the fight, she says she felt a different power coming from the Manacor. She states that she'll discover what he's hiding in the dungeon, leaving him worried. At that, a porter approaches, apologizing to them for the long delay. Seeing that everything's ready, Noah simply tells the group they can go now. Entering the tower, they join other adventurers and prepare for the mission. At the registration counter, he informs the receptionist that the group is of 3. Nearby, 2 guards comment if they wouldn't be Osrek's next victims. Reaching an immense door, he warns that there is the entrance to the infinite library. With considerable force, he begins to push the doors so they can pass through. The giant doors open very slowly, revealing a passage for the group. Then the 3 cross the portal and enter the great main hall together. Amazed by the place, Noah comments on how the library is truly vast. Julia says she now understands why a guide is necessary in that labyrinth. On all sides, stairs and bookshelves extend as far as the eye can see. Suddenly he stops and is surprised by something he sees on the wall. Analyzing a mural, he questions whether that image would be about the invaders. He finds it strange not having noticed that before, thinking it has a connection to the future. In that place, he realizes he can find a clue on how to finally defeat them. With a slight smile, he warns everyone that it's time to depart. He then declares that their objective is the Book of Depth. Walking through the first floor, he asks the guide where the Yuan is. Looking at a map, the guide says the book should be on the 20th floor. He remembers that the 20th floor is the deepest they've ever reached in the dungeon. Moving forward, they approach a magic circle on the hall floor. Getting closer, the magic circle on the floor begins to activate. From the magic portal, 3 monsters appear ready to attack the group of adventurers. The guide warns that monsters always appear there and asks if they can handle them. Drawing his sword, he says confidently that there won't be any problem. He advances and lands a powerful strike that hits all the monsters at once. After the attack, he lands on the ground, preparing for the next move. All the monsters are defeated with a single blow, falling to the ground, already lifeless. Seeing the scene, the guide is surprised, and Noah says to keep moving. Already on the 10th floor, Osrek asks them to keep what they'll see a secret. He then approaches the bookshelf and pulls a very specific book from it. Removing the book, a secret passage opens in the bookshelf for the group. Inside the room, he reveals that this secret passage is actually a shortcut. Then the 3 of them position themselves together on top of the large magic circle on the floor. In the next instant, the magic circle activates and takes them down. With a bright flash, the teleport is complete, and they arrive at the new floor. After the teleportation, he observes the new location with a very attentive gaze. She asks where they are, and he says they're near the 20th floor. Moving ahead, she warns that the next monster is just up ahead. Continuing the path, the group approaches another magic portal in the hall. When they get close, the magic circle begins to activate again. From the portal, a giant monster with several enormous roots begins to emerge. The monster reveals itself completely, blocking their path with its size. Frightened, the guide shouts that it's an Elder Trent, a stronger version. She says it's not a problem, but he warns they don't stand a chance. With a smile, she asks what made him think it would be both of them. Drawing her sword, she guarantees that she alone is more than enough for the fight. Advancing quickly, she charges at the monster with her sword in hand. To defend itself, the monster attacks with a strike of several pointed roots. Dodging with agility, she manages to cut all the strikes coming her direction. Continuing her advance, she leaps over the debris to attack the monster. Getting close enough, she lands a direct hit on the monster's body. Her powerful strike hits squarely on one of the giant creature's eyes. After the attack, she leaps back and prepares for the next move. Landing on the ground, she comments that the monster is quite resistant. Desperate, the guide shouts that they need a mage to win. At that moment, the monster's roots begin to wrap around her body. Completely trapped, she's unable to move for an instant. Seeing that she's trapped, the monster prepares to deliver a final blow. Worried about the situation, Noah shouts his sister's name desperately. The roots then begin to tighten, trying to crush her body. She then uses a strike that creates an attack circle around her. With the strike, she reveals her shadow flame armor and breaks free. Surprised, Noah shouts if that would really be a flame armor. Preparing her next strike, she announces the first form of her style. The blade of her sword is covered by a dark and powerful energy. Without hesitation, she prepares to launch her attack against the monster. Charging forward, she advances with incredible speed against the treant. With several strikes, she begins to cut the monster's branches non-stop. Getting closer, she continues landing her strikes on the enemy's body. Shouting with force, she prepares a final strike to hit the monster. The strike cuts through the air with devastating force toward the enemy. The attack hits dead on, cutting the monster's body right down the middle. She then says that steel isn't enough to stop her blade. The guide shouts that the battle isn't over yet, looking to the side. At that moment, one of the monster's roots manages to trap the guide's ankle. Before he can react, he's completely trapped by the monster's roots. Trapped by the roots, she says the monster regenerates and needs to be burned. Amidst the roots, she begins to prepare a new strike to break free. Noah is surprised to see her using the third form of her style. Grabbing the guide's hand, he pulls him away from the imminent danger. Shouting for the guide to run, he drags him to a safe distance from the fight. With red eyes, she releases all her power at once. Using her strike, she causes an enormous explosion that destroys everything around. The shockwave from the strike advances toward the two with force. Being thrown far, they fall to the ground from the impact of the powerful strike. Fallen on the ground, Noah explains that she's incinerating everything to stop the regeneration. After the explosion, she stands in front of the passage, victorious in battle. Turning to the two, she asks if they can continue on the path now. The guide says it's unbelievable that she managed to do all that alone. Her style shows an unparalleled offensive power, draining a lot of energy quickly. Leaving the destruction behind, the group finally moves forward in the dungeon. Arriving at the 20th floor, they begin searching for the book on the shelves. With an attentive gaze, he notices something important on one of the shelves. Shouting with excitement, he finally finds the book he was searching for so much there. She says they now need to find the monster, and he confirms it's the right floor. Climbing the stairs, he explains that this specific monster is a major exception. Stopping midway, the group observes something unexpected up ahead. They find a book on a pedestal in front of a large mural. Taking the book, he begins to analyze the content of the pages with attention. Surprised, he realizes he found exactly what he was looking for in that book. Flipping through the pages quickly, he searches for a very specific piece of information there. At that moment, he feels a strange presence approaching them suddenly. Drawing their swords, everyone prepares for the battle that's about to begin. At the end of the corridor, the monster finally appears, facing the group from afar. Pointing at the enemy, the guide shouts that this is the monster that cursed his wife. Readying his sword, he says it's time to begin the hunt for the monster. Seeing the scene, she screams for Noah to stay back and not interfere. With a strong step on the ground, she propels herself into combat. Shouting that she'll handle everything, she charges forward with her power activated. With several strikes, she begins attacking the monster with her sword. She then defends the enemy's blow, blocking the attack with her blade. The clash of their strikes is so strong it destroys the library floor. Amid the debris, she says she can't believe she's being overpowered. Braced on one knee, she says a prolonged fight is far too dangerous. The monster attacks again, destroying the hall's columns with its strike. Dodging the attack, she manages to defend against the blow at the last instant. With a quick spin, she lands a precise strike on the monster's body. Continuing the combat, the two exchange increasingly powerful and fast blows. The intense fight between them continues, causing massive destruction all over the place. Watching the scene, Noah says the monster managed to block her direct attack. In a final exchange of blows, the two use all their strength in the attack. Even wounded, she prepares to continue the combat against the powerful enemy. She then begins preparing the second form of her fighting style. Her powerful strike creates a vortex of flames around the enemy. Hidden, the guide says it might work, but Noah asks him to wait. Countering the attack, the monster defends itself with a strike from its weapon. With its weapon, it manages to stop her sword's blow in midair. Shouting that it's got her, the monster manages to grip her arm with force. It seizes the chance and lands a direct blow on her body. Being thrown backward, she crashes against the wall with the impact. Advancing again, the monster takes advantage of her being down to attack. With rage, she screams and defends against the enemy's new blow. Noah says that even with all her power, she can't scratch the armor. Even wounded, she stands up and faces the monster once more. Preparing a new strike, the monster accumulates energy inside its mouth. She looks at her arm, noticing something strange is happening to it. The monster attacks with a powerful energy blast in Julia's direction. To protect her, Noah throws himself in front and takes the full impact of the blow. With the attack, a huge trench opens in the floor, splitting the hall. He says he'll help, but she warns him to be careful with the hands. She explains that if he touches those hands, he'll end up receiving a curse. With her injured arm, she warns she can't use a fatal blow. At this, Noah approaches her and decides to ask a very important favor. Remembering the earlier strike, the monster prepares to attack again. He then asks her to use the strike, but she says it's too risky. Saying to leave it to him, the two advance to cut off the monster's hands. Attacking together, they hit the monster with a blow from each side. Combining their forces, the two prepare one final joint strike. They then strike the monster at the same time with a powerful attack. With the impact, a giant energy explosion takes over the place. The final blow causes a massive explosion, destroying everything around. Advancing together, the two siblings prepare to continue the fight against the monster. Amid the debris, they face each other, ready for the next step of the battle. Even after the blow, the monster remains standing and seems even more furious. Attacking together again, she says he's a true monster of power. With a swift strike, the monster is thrown backward by the combined attack. Leaping into the air, she repositions herself to continue the sequence of strikes. Meanwhile, the monster tries to hit Noah, who defends against the blow. He manages to block the counterattack, using his sword to protect himself. Sensing the danger, he screams for her to get away from the fight immediately. Ignoring the warning, she uses the second form of another fighting style. Her new strike hits the monster squarely, causing a massive impact. Without giving up, the monster prepares another energy blast with its mouth. Desperate, she ends up screaming Noah's name, fearing the worst. At this, Noah prepares to use his most powerful fighting style. He then releases his final blow to try to end the fight once and for all. His strike hits the monster squarely, throwing the creature backward. Even after the attack, he remains standing and faces the huge monster. Seizing the chance, he lands a fatal blow on the monster's head. The monster then grabs his sword, preventing the final attack from happening. Realizing the situation, he warns that this is a big problem for them. To help, she uses a strike that creates a powerful vortex against the enemy. With the new attack, she says now they're even for the save. He notices that not even his strongest blow managed to scratch the monster. He then wonders if their only choice is to retreat from the battle. At this moment, a second monster suddenly appears behind them both. He's shocked and asks if now there are two monsters to fight. Hearing a mysterious voice, he comments that that technique is quite clumsy. Suddenly, he finds himself in a completely white and unknown place. Looking at a light, he tries to understand what's happening there. Confused by the situation, he asks who's there and where he is. The voice says he's the successor and tells him to end everything in one blow. Back to the fight, the voice reveals that the name of that technique is something else. Seeing him standing still, his sister screams, asking what he's doing there. At this, a system window confirms the awakening and unlocks a new authority. Preparing a new strike, he activates the second form of an authority style. Wielding his sword, his body is covered by a new energy of power. With a focused gaze, he finally reveals the name of his new powerful strike. He then launches a blow that hits both monsters at the same time. Being struck head-on, the two monsters are completely cut by his blow. With a smile, he says, "This is the power of the sacred magic core." Warning that the fun is over, he says he'll pay everything back double. In the middle of combat, he delivers a powerful strike against both opponents. Before him, a system message confirms that the invitation has been accepted. Suddenly, a new power flows into his sword, leaving him surprised. Sensing the change, he understands that the succession of power was a success. Floating in the air, he observes a figure manifesting right in front of him. Then, he finds himself face to face with a long-haired man. Not understanding the situation, he asks who this person in front of him is. Introducing himself, the man says he is Zykus, the former heir of the divine core. Zykus then explains that the powers he had were just defective products. In a flashback, he tells how in the Age of Gods, invaders from another world appeared. He continues, saying that humanity lost the war because of internal conflicts. Zykus reveals that he was assassinated by others who feared his great power. After his death, he explains they divided the power into two parts. By possessing both halves, he says the young man can inherit the original power. With one last doubt, he asks if Zykus would have won without the betrayal. Showing his strength, he faced an army of invaders alone in the past. Confident, he states he would have finished off all enemies easily. Clenching his fist, he says that with this power he can change that future. But Zykus warns that his current level is too low for that to be possible. With a smile, he confirms that's exactly what he intends to do. Seeing his determination, Zykus smiles and says that to begin. He tells the young man to show he can handle the enemy in front of him. Releasing his power, he advances at high speed toward the enemy. Coming face to face with the monster, he prepares his next move. Determined, he shouts, saying this time he'll finish off the enemy. He then delivers a powerful strike, colliding directly with his opponent. Then, the system describes his new blade manipulation ability. Using the ability, he launches a gigantic strike toward his rival. Surprised, the wounded man says he used that light to tear off his arm. With no chance to defend, the enemy is struck head-on by the devastating blow. Moving closer, he lands a direct strike that pierces through the opponent's body. With a smile, he says the tables have turned completely in his favor. He then advances again, delivering multiple sequential strikes against the enemy. Feeling the blows, the monster screams desperately while being attacked non-stop. Saying that was the first one, he finishes with a powerful strike. With the force of impact, the enemy is thrown far away, falling defeated. Suddenly, he turns his face, sensing a new threat nearby. He then sees the woman preparing a massive strike in his direction. Then, the other woman screams desperately, asking Noah to get out of the way. Ignoring her, she fires the enormous strike toward the man. Prepared for what was coming, he uses his ability to defend against the attack. His power then clashes directly with the strike coming at him. The collision of strikes causes a gigantic explosion that destroys everything around. After the dust settles, the result of the confrontation is finally revealed. Among the rubble, he appears without a scratch, holding his sword. Astonished, she wonders how he didn't suffer a single scratch from that strike. Holding the sword, he states that was the second enemy to be defeated. Without wasting time, he launches a powerful strike against the last remaining enemy. Taking the hit head-on, the monster is completely engulfed by the power. After the attack, the enemy falls to the ground, completely defeated by the blow. Then, the system informs him that he eliminated the target and acquired an ability. Seeing another message, he realizes it was sent by Zykus. In the message, Zykus explains that's how the divine core manages to evolve. Clenching his fist, he understands what it means to get stronger through battle. Running toward him, the man asks if he really defeated the monster. Looking at the body on the ground, she confirms the monster is definitely dead. Then she realizes the curse that afflicted her has finally been broken. She warns the man that his wife's curse has also been broken. Walking toward him, she says she doesn't believe his former rank. Curious, she asks where he learned that combat technique. Assuming he can't speak, she says there are several fighting styles. She begins listing the magic sword style, considered the fundamental among them. Continuing, she mentions the flame style, focused entirely on attack power. Next, she talks about the thunder style, which prioritizes the user's speed. Finally, she cites the darkness style, which relies on deceiving opponents. Saying his technique is different, she asks what he's hiding. Without answering anything, he just stares at her in silence for a moment. She also continues looking fixedly at him, waiting for some answer. With a slight smile, she decides to drop the subject for now. Moving away from him, she says she looks forward to the day they'll fight. Back at the academy, the scene shifts to the grand corridors of the place. While walking with the man, he confirms he'll use the book to get information. When he reaches his destination, he then prepares to open the door. Upon opening the door, he finds the place trashed with a man on the floor. Desperate, the blonde shouts that Eve was taken, and he asks who did that. Revealing the culprit, the man says it was Skull who took the girl. He continues, explaining that Eve was taken to be interrogated by force. Hearing the name, he realizes Skull was behind the assassins too. Decided, he says then it's simple, they just need to rescue Eve. Correcting his friend, he warns it won't be a balanced opposition. With a serious look, he says, what's about to begin is retaliation. Then the blonde warns he's coming along to fix his own mistakes. Worried, The man asks them to wait, but the blonde says there's no time. Holding the sword, he states the blades of his family never break. Understanding the situation, the man says he'll protect the house until they return. With a determined look, he promises he'll protect the place with his life. Leading the way, he calls the others to invade Skull's base. Riding at high speed, the two rush toward their destination. Worried, he asks if Eve is okay, but receives a confident answer. Then, he asks why he became Eve's personal guard. In a flashback, he reveals that his core was inferior to his siblings. In his memories, he was always overshadowed by his opponent's power. In that difficult moment, Eve appeared and extended her hand to help him. He explains that to compensate, he needed to learn new secret combat skills. Understanding the situation, he realizes why his fighting style was so unpredictable. Determined, he states that he'll guarantee Eve's safety with his own strength. Arriving at the mansion gates, he says they need to find out where Eve is. After getting off the horse, he warns that they don't need to act stealthily. Taking a step forward, his foot prepares to strike the ground. With a powerful blow to the ground, he breaks the floor to draw attention. Right after, he charges forward running, preparing for the invasion to come. Coming face to face with the enemies, an army of guards was already waiting for them. Recognizing the enemies, he warns their Skull's assassin unit. Jumping from a wall, the blonde says they're all combat specialists. Hidden in the trees, several assassins watch the arrival of the two young men. Seeing the audacity, their leader says he can't believe they came through the front. He responds that he has no time to waste and tells them to call Skull right away. The leader then warns that he doesn't understand the dangerous situation he got himself into. Suddenly, one of the assassins appears from behind for a treacherous strike, but he reacts in time, blocking the enemy's attack with his sword. Without difficulty, he counterattacks and throws the assassin to the ground with one blow. The leader then shouts that they'll have no mercy on those who dare challenge Skull. Ignoring the threat, he advances alone toward the group of enemies. Getting close, he attacks the leader first, initiating the confrontation between the two. With a quick movement, he spins to dodge the blow and prepares a counterattack. The two continue exchanging blows, with their swords clashing non-stop. While the fight happens, the blonde ends up surrounded by several other assassins. Jumping into the middle of the enemies, he prepares a strike against all of them. Using his technique, he prepares to launch a powerful area strike. With a blow to the ground, he releases an enormous amount of energy. With the impact, all the assassins are thrown far away by the blow. Being hit directly, the enemies scream as they're all defeated. After defeating them, he shouts, asking for more enemies to come at him. Seeing that his friend handled it, he goes back to focusing on his opponent. Shouting at him, the leader warns not to get distracted during the fight. In a quick movement, he simply manages to cut off his opponent's hand. At that moment, the leader uses an item, activating a magic circle on the ground. Not understanding the technique, he wonders what that is on the ground. Revealing his trump card, the leader says it's a technique to kill his family. Ready for the attack, he advances to use the special move in his direction. With his eye glowing, he analyzes the enemy right in front of him. At that moment, a system window appears, showing his opponent's information. Using his technique, he prepares to use the second form of his style. At that moment, he places his hand on his own blade, starting to use his ability. Suddenly, he realizes something strange is happening with his body. His technique then creates a defense, which blocks the enemy's precise strike. Realizing he's not using his abilities, he says his core has been sealed. The leader then warns that he can't win using only his sword. Unexpectedly, another man arrives to help them inside that red area on the ground. Even with help, they find themselves completely surrounded by many other enemies. Seeing the situation, the blonde says having the core sealed is a problem. He then warns that he'll hold them off and asks the other to go ahead. Confident, he says not to worry and to go rescue Eve right away. With a determined look, he turns and decides to move forward alone. He then starts running, passing by the enemies that surrounded him on the way. Running without stopping, he dodges the strikes of the assassins trying to stop him. The blonde warns that his core may be sealed, but he still uses magic. Using his magic, the other man creates a huge stone path on the ground. The stone path then rises, taking him to the top of the building. Shouting from below, the blonde tells him to find the isolated palace. Seeing him flee, the leader shouts for the other assassins to go after him. But on the way, they're surprised by a trap of stone spikes. With no time to react, the leader also ends up caught by the spikes. With his magic, he manages to defeat several of the assassins at once. Completely cornered, the leader has nowhere to escape from that situation. At that moment, the blonde appears and says his problem now is with him. Changing scenes, Skull asks if Eve is ready to give information. She refuses to answer, so he says she's very stubborn. He then threatens, saying he captured several of her subordinates too. Furious, she says it's a disgrace to have trash like him as a brother. Suddenly he hears a noise and realizes it's coming from outside. With a smile, She says Noah finally arrived to finish him off. With a furious look, he says she doesn't seem to understand the situation. She then explains that pride is the most important thing for their family. Irritated, he says he'll finally see what Noah is really capable of now. Calling her insolent, he prepares to attack with his sword. Suddenly, Noah breaks through the window and invades the room with a strike. Seeing the scene, he warns that he finally arrived to rescue her. Standing in the middle of the room, he then calls out Eve's name. Sitting in the chair, she warns that he arrived too late to save her. Furious, Skull draws his sword and shouts Noah's full name. Without faltering, he just stares at his opponent with a confident look. Standing face to face, he says it's time to settle everything. With a smile, he asks if Noah really thinks he can beat him. Full of confidence, Noah responds that he can obviously defeat him without any problems. Irritated by the answer, he yells and charges forward with a powerful strike. He tries to land a blow, but Noah manages to defend against the enemy's attack. With the force of the strike, Noah is thrown outside, breaking through the wall. The fight continues outside, with the two exchanging intense blows. After falling to the ground, they stare each other down amid the rubble. Using his ability, he analyzes the opponent standing before him. The system then displays Skull's information and fighting style. Noah asks why he went so far, even using children. With a smile, he says the reason for all of this is pretty obvious. Screaming, he says he simply can't stand Noah and lunges forward. He attacks, but Noah manages to defend against the blow with his sword. Far from the magic circle, he notices the seal on his core has disappeared. Skull screams that he hates him for being recognized, attacking with a strike. Defending himself from the blow, he manages to block his opponent's attack. Screaming furiously, Skull launches a powerful strike in his direction. With a quick movement, he manages to dodge the blow by slipping underneath. After dodging, he backs away to prepare for the next attack. Analyzing his opponent, he realizes the sword skill is real. Skull yells that he'll be the bait to win the succession battle. Using the third form of his style, he prepares a new powerful strike. He then summons an army of skeletons to attack his opponent. Seeing the army, he prepares to fight against all the skeletons. Wondering if it's a distraction, he prepares for combat. Suddenly, one of the skeletons appears to attack him from behind. Turning around in time, he prepares to defend against the skeleton's strike. He then defends the blow, making both swords clash together. Realizing it's not an illusion, he understands the skeletons are real. With no time to think, several other skeletons rush to attack him head-on. Jumping into the air, he launches a powerful strike against the skeletons below. Using the second form of his style, he prepares his next attack. He then unleashes a devastating blow with multiple energy blades. With the impact, the strike pierces through and destroys several skeletons at once. Landing on the ground, he finishes the strike with a swift sword movement. Seeing there are still enemies left, he just complains that this is a pain. Without wasting time, he propels his body forward to advance against the enemies. With a spinning strike, he destroys all the skeletons that were surrounding him. He then continues advancing while Skull watches everything from afar. Astonished, Skull yells, asking if he's going to face the army alone. Ignoring the others, he advances and lands a direct hit on Skull. Suddenly, more skeletons appear behind him, ready to attack. He then launches another strike, destroying the enemies that were approaching. While defeating the skeletons, he exchanges blows directly with Skull. Shouting, he says it doesn't matter how many weaklings he keeps summoning. With a wide strike, he attacks the opponent who was retreating in the air. Landing on the ground, Skull prepares to use a new special ability. At a distance from him, a large area is affected by power coming from the ground. He then drives his sword into the ground, activating an area technique. Quickly, several stone spikes begin to emerge around his enemy. Surprised, he finds himself completely surrounded by his opponent's ability. Suddenly, an enormous bone dragon emerges from the ground behind him. Screaming, Skull orders the dragon to attack and tear his enemy apart. Facing the creature, he discovers it's a powerful summoned skeleton dragon. With a smile, he says it's the perfect moment to test something new. The system window appears, showing his newly acquired ability. Preparing his style, he gets ready to use the fifth form of his power. With his eye glowing, he activates the new ability against the enormous dragon. He then advances, landing a devastating blow on the great dragon's head. With the impact of the strike, the skeleton dragon is brutally wounded by the attack. Leaping toward the dragon, he prepares to use his new ability. Facing the creature, his eye connects with that of the enormous skeleton dragon. With his sword embedded, he lands on the head of the now dominated dragon. Seeing the scene, Skull watches in shock as the dragon is now under new control. Desperate, he yells for the dragon to hurry up and attack his enemy. Standing on the creature, he explains that his ability can steal control. Warning that the creature is under his command, Skull screams in pure rage. Using the first form of his style, he prepares a new, powerful strike. He then launches a piercing strike toward the enormous skeleton dragon. With the impact of the blow, a massive explosion happens throughout the entire area. After the smoke clears, he advances and exchanges direct blows with his opponent. Taking advantage of an opening, he lands a precise hit on Skull's shoulder. Feeling the strike, he's thrown backward, but manages to stay on his feet. Wounded, he says he didn't want to have to resort to his last option. He then grabs a flute, preparing to use a new secret technique. Using his flute, he opens a large portal right in front of him. From inside the portal, 2 guards appear holding a woman hostage. With a smile, he asks if Noah really came to rescue his sister. At that moment, one of the guards places the sword at her neck as a threat. The guard warns that if he moves, she dies that very instant. Skull then promises he'll release her, but only after defeating him in the fight. With nothing he can do, he stands paralyzed, thinking about how to save her. Suddenly, a strike coming from the sky hits the guards head-on. Not understanding anything, Skull sees that his 2 guards were defeated by the blow. With both on the ground, the person responsible for the attack finally reveals themselves. Protecting the girl, an armored man appears for the imminent confrontation. Shocked on the ground, Skull asks if that's really his brother, Damien. He then says that Eve had already warned him he wouldn't participate in the battle. Skull screams furiously, saying he doesn't care about that one bit. With a furious look, Damien warns he'll punish him for breaking the rules. Without reaction, Skull stays on the ground, feeling his opponent's intense pressure. With a serious look, he tells his opponent not to mess with him. He then remembers the fight is for the core, a very important battle. With that, he warns that no matter who it is, no one will stand in his way. Then, Eve reminds him that interfering in the fight is also a violation of the rules. Agreeing with her, he warns that the 2 can fight until the end. Turning to his opponent, Noah says they'll continue where they left off. He then taunts, asking if Skull can't fight without using hostages. Irritated by the provocation, he says everyone is looking down on him. He then prepares himself, using the 7th form of his combat style. Enveloped by his energy, he prepares for the final confrontation between them. Screaming, he warns he'll cut his opponent to pieces this time. Prepared to fight, he knows his opponent's style is deceptive. Seeing his enemy advance, he understands he needs to maintain pressure in combat. The 2 then advance and exchange blows with their swords in the center. With multiple strikes, he tries to confuse his opponent with his rapid movements. Using his special technique, he prepares to launch a powerful blow. He then releases the strike, which advances toward his enemy. Surprised, he sees the powerful blow was completely blocked by his opponent. Without wasting time, Skull prepares the 4th form of his fighting style. He then unleashes a shadowy strike, calling out the name of his special technique. The blow advances rapidly, going straight toward his great opponent. Seeing the danger, he struggles with all his might to defend against the powerful strike. With the blow, he receives a cut and understands the attack is indefensible. Being dragged backward, he tries to resist the force of the received blow. With that, Skull advances and screams, asking where he thinks he's running to. Advancing in the air, he manages to land a direct hit on his opponent. Even wounded, he manages to resist and continue fighting against his enemy. Surprised, Skull says he can't believe he avoided a fatal blow in that situation. He then prepares to advance, but is surprised by a sudden strike. A massive energy blow passes by him, showing its great strength. On the other side, his opponent dodges the blow with a quick movement. He then praises his opponent's strength and the versatility of his style. Confused, he asks why he used dirty tricks, even being so strong. He explains he couldn't forgive his father for not recognizing his talent. Because of that, he says he created a new fighting style for himself. Even with his new power, he says his father still ignored him. Screaming, he says all that's left is to win the succession battle. With an insane look, he says he'll dirty his hands if necessary. Without giving him time to react, the other advances with a strike. Screaming that enough talk, he launches his powerful final blow. Using the 9th form, he prepares an enormous and powerful final strike. His power then manifests as a giant serpent of pure energy. Seen from below, the serpent rises, looking at its enemy. The serpent advances, going after its opponent with a direct attack. With the impact, the serpent's blow causes a gigantic explosion on the ground. But amid the smoke, a powerful defense manages to stop the blow. From inside the smoke, he appears, having completely defended against the serpent's strike. After the defense, the energy serpent dissipates, vanishing in the air. Even after the defense, he appears quite wounded and gasping on the ground. With a smile, Skull says his core has finally reached its limit. Suddenly, he grabs something from inside his clothing, surprising his opponent. Not understanding what it is, Skull is confused, wondering what that is. In a flashback, he remembers the poison he received for a long time. He then swallows the pill, leaving his opponent completely shocked by the action. Skull screams, asking if he's gone crazy for taking that deadly poison. He says that since his body already overcame the poison he received, that pill became the perfect remedy to replenish all his energy. With that, a system window warns he's acquired a new ability. He warns he can't lose, as he swore never to repeat that tragedy again. Using the second form of his style, he prepares a gigantic blow. He then launches the strike, using his new ability of light and darkness. Screaming, the energy serpent advances to clash with his blow. The two powers then collide, with the serpent being hit head-on. The clash of the two blows causes a massive explosion between the opponents. With the force of the explosion, the two combatants are thrown far away. The released energy expands, creating an enormous sphere of pure destruction. The shockwave from the explosion continues spreading throughout the entire area. From afar, the armored man creates a defense to protect the girl. The massive explosion can be seen from a distance, destroying everything around. After the dust settles, the two appear amid all the destruction. Observing the scene, the two are shocked by the result of that fight. In the explosion crater, Skull is on the ground, while the other stands. Approaching, he warns he has no intention of taking his life. With his sword pointed, he simply tells his opponent to surrender. Defeated, Skull lowers his head and admits he lost the fight. He then says the mana core is his, and he accepts it. But suddenly, he notices a strange movement from his opponent on the ground. With a surprise attack, Skull manages to pierce his belly with the sword. With an evil smile, he seizes the chance for a treacherous attack. Surprised and wounded, he can't react to his opponent's unexpected blow. Surprised by the scene, they watch closely what's happening. He then shouts that he'll never surrender to people like them. Saying he won't be underestimated, he strikes a blow against his opponent. Hit by the attack, the man bends over, leaning on his sword. Desperate, she screams Noah's name when she sees him in that situation. Meanwhile, she and her guard just keep watching everything from afar. Shouting that this is the end, he charges forward for the final blow, but his gaze shifts, focusing directly on the incoming attack. In a quick movement, he manages to counter with a precise strike on his opponent. With the force of the counterattack, the enemy ends up being thrown backward. Fallen on the ground, he now faces the one who defeated him in combat. After the battle, both end up exhausted and fallen in the courtyard. Catching his breath, he kneels while holding his chest wound. Pulling the view back, the two bodies remain motionless in the middle of the courtyard. Running toward him, she screams his name again, seeing him fallen. Warning that the wound is fatal, the guard says help won't arrive in time. Determined, she states she'll take care of this and approaches to help him. Starting her technique, she says she'll use the first form of the Inca style. Then she activates the Nebula Lantern ability to heal his wounds. Traveling through his body, the technique begins to spread across his entire arm. Keeping her hand steady, she continues focused, applying her ability to the wound. Still lying down, he watches her while receiving treatment on his chest. Now conscious, he closely follows the entire process happening there. Sitting up, he asks about the technique, and she says it uses a mana core. Recovered, he thanks her for saving his life in that moment. Then he says that, more importantly, that now belongs entirely to her. At that moment, an object begins to emerge from the fallen opponent's body. He looks and says, "That's Skull's mana core." Kneeling, he stands before the core while she just watches everything from behind. Reaching out his hand, he prepares to finally grab the mana core. As he holds the core, he begins to feel all that power flowing. Suddenly, a status window appears showing his new information. Detailing his attributes, the window shows his name and skill levels. Seeing the screen, he realizes his mana core grew instantly. Looking to the side, he says it seems things have finally been resolved. Arriving at the location, a man approaches, asking his brother to stop. Before them, he says he didn't expect the youngest to defeat Skull. Worried, he asks if Eve got hurt, but she says she's fine. Questioning why he helped, Damien responds that he simply followed the rules. Turning his back, the knight walks away without saying another word. With a serious look, he watches the knight who's leaving the place. Observing the scene, the newcomer comments that was an interesting fight. Thoughtful, the knight says that unknown power left him quite curious, but he stops and warns that, for now, there's something else to be resolved. Appearing in the courtyard, a man informs that Lord Noah has been summoned by Victor. Shifting the scene to Victor's castle, the place looks truly imposing. Already in the office, Victor says he heard he took Skull's core. With his hand on the desk, he seems to be analyzing some important documents. Maintaining a serious look, he then asks directly if that story is true. He confirms yes, explaining he fought the enemy and managed to win. At that, Victor asks how strong he thought Skull really was. With a sharp gaze, he wants to know why Noah thinks he prevailed. After a brief pause, he prepares to finally give his answer. He responds that it was his hunger for strength, something he yields to no one. Giving a slight smile, Victor says that was a very good answer. Then he explains that for stopping Skull, he'll now receive a reward. Asking him to state his wish, Noah requests a mission to a certain location. Surprised, Victor asks if he has no greed, since he could have asked for gold. He responds that he believes he'll gain much more where he's going. Understanding his quest, Victor accepts and asks where this place is. Traveling along a mountain road, the carriage continues its long journey. Inside the vehicle, a maid asks if the trip is Victor's reward. With a smile, he says he'll leave all the travel arrangements to them. Agreeing, the maid tells him to leave everything to the two of them. At that moment, one of them is surprised looking through the carriage window. Shouting excitedly, she points saying the destination can finally be seen. Through the glass reflection, he observes the landscape approaching his goal. Finally reaching the destination, the carriage approaches the city of Draconia. Following the road, the carriage draws closer and closer to the city. Draconian knights appear on the path, heading toward the arriving vehicle. Stopping abruptly on the road, the carriage wheel kicks up a bit of dust. Stepping out of the vehicle, he's asked if he's truly Lord Noah. Introducing themselves, the knights say they're messengers sent directly from Draconia. They then offer to escort him to the city with total security. With a thoughtful look, he seems to analyze the proposal he just received. Looking ahead, he appears to have already made a decision about the escort. He then thanks them, saying he truly appreciates the help they're offering. Suddenly, an enemy group appears shouting that they've found the Daskul family member. Landing forcefully on the ground, one of the enemies prepares for combat. Leading the attack, a group of ogres faces the people who are on the road. Surprised, the guards shout, asking what the ogre tribe is doing there. Drawing his sword, he recognizes the tribe as enemies of the region's Draconians. Recalling the past, the war between the tribes is shown in a flashback. Understanding the situation, he says the ogres want to prevent them from helping. Then he asks Lydia and Selena to take shelter inside the carriage. Facing the group, their leader says the Draconians must be desperate. He warns he has no business with weak people and tells him to leave. Giving a slight smile, he simply asks if that's really what he thinks. Then he offers the same choice. Leave now, and he'll let him live. With an irritated look, the ogre shows he didn't like that proposal. Shouting that he's an arrogant brat, the ogre begins to transform. He warns he'll grind his bones, becoming even larger in front of him. Advancing, he stomps forcefully on the ground to begin his great attack. Despite the impact, he manages to stand firm amid all the dust. Readying his sword, he awaits the right moment to counterattack. The enemy then tries to crush him with a powerful downward strike. Escaping by a hair, he leaps backward while the entire ground breaks. After the strike, a huge crater forms at the impact site. Thrown by the impact, he repositions himself in the air for the next move. Feeling the pressure of the attack, he prepares for what comes next. Then a massive chunk of rock is launched in the direction he was standing. Announcing the first form, he concentrates to use the shinny style. With his technique, he launches a strike that cuts the rock to pieces. But the ogre already appears behind him, ready to continue the surprise attack. Advancing quickly, the enemy tries to hit him with a direct and powerful strike. The blow ends up hitting one of the rocks, which splits from the force. He then says the ogre attacks using only his brute strength. Jumping into the crater, he says the ogre's technique is pretty sloppy. Irritated, the ogre calls him a fool for coming at him head-on like that. Then the giant prepares another strike, aiming directly at his opponent. Standing face to face, he prepares to receive the enemy's blow. At the exact moment, he manages to counterattack with a precise sword strike. Hit squarely, the ogre's arm is cut off by the attack he received. Challenging the enemies, he tells the rest of them to come at him. Facing the group on the cliff, he prepares for the imminent combat. With great rage, the remaining ogres shout and prepare to advance. Jumping all together, they rush at him in a coordinated attack. Then he announces the second form of the powerful and renowned shinny style. Using his technique, he delivers a single strike that hits all opponents. Defeated by the attack, the ogres crash heavily to the ground around him. Impressed, the guards say the Daskul family's power is incredible. Praising the performance, they're reminded they should have stayed in the carriage. One of them responds, "It's a servant's duty to witness her master's triumphs." Looking up, he says now there's only one left and calls for him to come down. Then everyone looks at the sky, seeing a dragon flying over the mountain. Suddenly, a mysterious figure ends up jumping from atop the dragon in the sky. Landing forcefully on the ground, the new enemy reveals himself in front of them. Facing the young man, he says he could see his power with his own eyes. Introducing himself, he says he's Adalbalt Fangray, captain of the Dragon Knights of Draconia. He then explains they couldn't entrust their king to a weakling who needed help. With a curious look, He asks if he managed to pass the test then. Confirming yes, the captain warns he'll escort him to Lord Arcados. Following through the city, the party continues its path to the final destination. One of the servants is impressed, saying draconians and humans live together. She adds that a country with different races coexisting is very rare. Advising them to explore the city later, he says they'll really enjoy it. Then a huge dragon appears in the sky, flying over the mountain near them. Entering a cave, the group follows the captain through a dark path. They then reach a giant gate with a dragon carved in the stone. Announcing his arrival, the captain says he's brought Lord Noah Daskul. From inside the place, a mysterious voice says they may enter. Slowly, the great stone doors begin to open in front of them. Suddenly, an unknown force begins to pull everyone toward the gate. Feeling the strong pressure, he realizes it's the same as his father's. Even the draconian knights kneel, unable to resist that force. Protecting the servants, he stands firm while they lean on him. Being pulled inside the gate, the entire group is dragged by the force. Before a new hall, he hears a voice giving welcome. Then a massive white dragon calls him his young and new ally. Nearby, the servants and guards simply watch the situation closely. Introducing himself, he says he's Noah Daskul and that he came on his father's orders. The dragon then thanks Victor for sending one of his successors. Staring intently at him, the dragon says he feels a nostalgic power within him. He then comments that this was to be expected from the King of Dragons. Focusing his power, he prepares to show his true strength there. Releasing his energy, he stands before that great and ancient creature. Faced with the demonstration, the dragon simply observes the power he's emanating. Surprised, the dragon says he never imagined seeing that glow again. Then the dragon authorizes Adalbalt to tell everything that's happening. At that, the captain says he'll explain the request to the Daskul family. In a flashback, he explains that the Draconians have been at war for years. He continues saying that the balance of power has recently shifted on the map. Pointing to the marks, he says the ogres recruited a new strategist. He then asks if they want help to turn the tide of battle. Driving a dagger into the map, the captain shows the gravity of the current situation. He then says they want help to end this long war. With a serious look, he explains that everything needs to end before the king's death. Before the great dragon, he understands that Lord Alcados's time is running out. Realizing the urgency, he comprehends that the king doesn't have much longer to live. Then it's revealed that the Alcados core will be born when the dragon's life ends. Remembering his past life, he knows this power has already caused great destruction. Placing his hand on his chest, he affirms that he'll fulfill their request. Grateful, the dragon offers materials from his own body as a reward. Promising help, the captain says he'll spare no effort to complete the mission. He also mentions the rumor that the ogre clan obtained 8 treasures. Hearing the new information, he continues paying attention to every detail. Being magical tools, the treasures directly affect a nation's military power. He says he understood and that he'll investigate the situation on his own. After the long conversation, the entire group begins to leave the hall. Walking through the city, he knows the battle will become a racial war. With a slight smile, he thinks he never imagined inviting her again. Seeing the scriptures, he approaches a large monument in the square. Before the statue, he continues his search for someone very important. In the distance, he spots a woman and realizes it was easy to find her. Remembering the past, he saw her as a powerful and important saint. In another memory, he sees her losing her life during a great war. Walking behind her, he says he never imagined meeting her again like this. Noticing she's being followed, she glances sideways with some distrust. She then asks him to please not stare at her that way. With her instrument beside her, she warns that the next performance will take a while. Not understanding, he asks about the performance, surprising the girl with the question. At that, she apologizes and asks what his name would be so they can talk. Holding her musical instrument, she prepares to introduce herself to him. With a smile, she says she's Liliana, the bard of that city. Surprised by the revelation, he wonders if she's hiding her identity as a saint. Seeing her stats, he realizes she's not as strong as she used to be. Calling out to Liliana, he says he needs to have a serious conversation with her. After the explanation, she says she didn't know the conflict was that serious, but with a serious look, she crosses her arms and says she can't help him. Not understanding the refusal, he asks why she can't help with the mission. With her eyes glowing, she explains that she senses a demonic power coming from him. Enveloped by her energy, he stands still while she observes him carefully. Asking what she thinks, he reveals that he also possesses another power. Surprised, she realizes that sacred power is mixed with the other power. Seeing both powers, she finally agrees, but imposes a single condition. With a different look, she asks him to find a partner to satisfy her. Shocked by the request, he's completely without reaction before that condition. At that, an image shows what the ideal partner she so desires would be like. Describing what she wants, She says she refuses anyone with demonic power. Realizing she hasn't changed, he remembers how she always was. Thinking about the proposal, he says he knows exactly the right guy for her. Extending her hand, she says she looks forward to working together with him. Shaking her hand, he finally introduces himself as Noah Daskul. Changing scenes, the city of Draconia is seen with its high mountains. In a rocky place, she asks what they're doing there. He says he heard about magical rocks protected by a sanctuary in the mountain. With a focused gaze, he concentrates to find the exact location. Before a ruined entrance, they find what they were looking for. Activating his ability, he begins to use his special vision to investigate. With his power, he manages to see beyond the rocks of that ancient ruin. He then locates a magical seal that was hidden right below them. Wielding his sword, he prepares to finally break that magical seal. With a precise strike, he hits the seal to release the secret passage. After the impact, the seal completely dissolves in the midst of the darkness. With the seal broken, they begin to descend through a new mysterious path. Crossing the passage, they walk toward the light that emerges at the end. She says that's a warning, sensing a dangerous presence further ahead. He then asks if she's scared, but she denies it right away. Moving forward, the two continue exploring the interior of